welcome back to our This Month in Gaming History series of retrospectives, where today we're having a look at April 1984, and starting us off here is a little game called Bovver, which was created by John Rittman, who would later become fondly known for games like Head Over Heels, Batman, those sort of isometric puzzle games, sort of puzzle adventure games on the Spectrum. But this is, well, perhaps a little less exciting. What we have here is a sort of barely disguised clone of Burger Time. It might not seem it at first, and I'm playing on mute here because the soundtrack to Bovver, which is a horrible, ear-piercing rendition of the Teddy Bear's Picnic, is just not something that you want to listen to, even less than my voice. It might not seem, just to look at it initially, like it's a Burger Time ripoff, but that's what we have here. Basically, oh no, oh dear, I'm getting caught all over, but I seem to be alright. I don't know. There's oddly an easy mode on this, which we're not playing on right now, which has, in which you can't die, and it's called Baby Bear mode. The idea you're supposed to be playing with your baby sibling, I guess. But when you start playing Bovver, it's clear the idea here. You're driving this Sinclair electric truck, which is obviously a nod to Sir Clive's, the inventor of the Spectrum, of course. Wacky inventions like the C5, was it the C5, the Z5, whatever it was, his electric car idea. And I've got I want to get this milk because that will give me points, because bears like milk apparently. I've got to go down the ladders, and basically because my car's crap and it keeps on running out of electric juice, I have to drop the batteries down from the ceiling, as well as crushing sort of any other bears that are that are not environmentalists, and they want to see me profoundly punished for my adoption of the electric vehicle here. But I think this is for whatever reason, this is in Baby Bear mode or whatever, because they don't seem too keen on chasing me down, on handing me down too hard for driving my electric car. Here I go, I'm back again. And there you go. Now, I mean, there was a couple of rip-offs of the Data East game, Burger Time, on the Spectrum. I think the most probably well-known was Wimpy by Ocean, which was an absolutely brazen Burger Time knockoff, down to you actually making burgers, and that was built around, that was licensed from the British fast food chain, sadly no longer anymore, the wimpy British fast food chain. But this is a little bit more subtle in its knockoffery, but not too much. Clones are a common thing. And this was, reasonably well received at the time. It's fairly hard to see why, just from originality standpoint, but the game's not bad. But certainly not the best thing John Whitman would put out when you compare it to his other games in the later 80s. Okay, so let's move on. There was one other huge Spectrum release in April 1984, so let's look at that. Okay, next up, it's a landmark title for the Spectrum, Set Willy from Software Projects and Matt Smith. The sequel to Manic Miner, and problems with the Spectrum handling anything. The music cuts out as soon as you start moving, but Manic Miner, which was a huge success on Spectrum and sort of turned Matt Smith into a sort of programming celebrity straight off the bat. And this was the sequel, the second in a planned trilogy. How often do we say that in video games? Games that were planned as trilogies and that never turning out. The third game was going to be Minor Willy Meets the Taxman. And so that was very sort of political for the time, you know, during the Thatcherite era. And that never did happen. In fact, Matthew Smith, for the longest time, sort of became very secluded, and he's certainly not attached to video games anymore, but for the longest time was sort of unreachable. Everybody thought he'd disappeared off the face of the earth. Did surface for an interview a few years back to talk about things, but yeah. In the meantime, he was making this. Now, the deal here is that Willy here, Minor Willy, he wants to just go to bed. He's had a wild party. As you saw, he woke up in the bathtub. But the housekeeper, if I touch the housekeeper, she kills me. You know, I have to go out and clean up after this party, which means I have to go out and I have to find all 100 items that are messing up this house. The house is extremely messy, and I have to do so in an extremely difficult platform game that, you know, I mean, it kind of determined how games of its ilk were made in Britain and in Europe for years, decades to come. So I can go about and tackle objectives here in any order. I can go about and find the items at will. This is a very bizarre, sort of almost a Sharian house in terms of what's going on in it. I mean, look at that. Here I'm in the nightwear room where I've turned into a flying pig. Such is what we see in Jet Set Willy. And it was so difficult, in fact, that, I mean, you start off with however many lives you saw me start off with, 9, I think. And I'm already down to the last few, because one touch and the collision detection is brutal and you're dead. The other luxury that that Mario would define Japanese platformers with a year later, was the innovation that was what some from a certain era tend to call the curly muffin. The curly muffin being that the physically impossible task of steering oneself in mid-air after you jump. And in Mario you do that all the time. It's crucial to sort of adjust in mid-air to get where you want to go. In Jet Set Willy, I can jump to the right and I can jump to the left, and it's always that same reliable arc, but it can't be changed. So there's no free-forming to chainsaws, flaming chainsaws, I think, razor blades. By goodness, what house does Jet Set Willy live in? Minor Willy, rather. Shit. There's no kind of adjustment going on. It is pure, well, skill-based, and I don't have much skill. And so the Monty Python foot there squishes me. But yeah, I mean, the other thing that it was famously too difficult in a sense. Well, in fact, this game is impossible to finish thanks to a number of bugs. Mainly in the attic section. I should have gone around the long way and gotten that bomb there. Never mind. Let's screw it. Let's see if we can get down here. Yeah, thanks to bugs in the attic section of the game, it can't be finished. You cannot 100% Jet Set Willy, and anybody who says that they did is a filthy, dirty liar. And thanks to those bugs, actually, Software Projects who published this, tried to pass that off initially as intended features before admitting, no, the game was actually released in a broken state. But still, I think plenty of people had fun trying, and it is fun to try. But I mean, you think, shit, your Meat Boys or whatever are brutally unforgiving. It's got nothing on Jet Set Willy, I'm afraid. This is a hard as balls game. How do I get even past this? What is that? Computer chip or razor blade? I'm not sure. Bastard. Fuck. And I mean, it's influenced platform games for years at the time, and even today. Certainly, if you've played Terry Gavana's VVVVV, then then you'll know what I mean, because that clearly was designed as an homage of sorts to the Minor Willy games. But that's as far as we're going to get. Ground score of 1 or 2 on Jet Set Willy, but a really great game from April of 1984. But let's move on from Spectrum simplicity to something a little bit more bombastic. So the opposite end of the production scale to Jet Set Willy then, Don Bluth and Advanced Microcomputer Systems put out Space Ace in the arcades in April 1984. This is the follow-up to Dragon's Lair, which had come out a couple of years previously, and it's pretty much the same game, but with a different, protagonist to Doug the Daring. The same style. It's an animation playing on the screen, and yeah, as you can see, certain parts of the screen flash up, and you've got to sometimes it's easy to interpret what those flashes mean, when they mean a jump to the left or a hit of the action button. Sometimes it's harder to interpret that, and everything's based on really tight timing to advance the game, basically. I mean, the entire game is 8 minutes long, so in order to keep on getting not even quarters but whole dollars out of people's pockets, it was ferociously hard and unfair. But the first sort of very early QuickTime events in video gaming, this was entirely a QuickTime event, as was Dragon's Lair. Because the animation was great. Don Bluth had worked at Disney and had come from Disney to making video games. But as games, even at the time, people were aware that they kind of sucked. Somehow Space Ace, much like Dragon's Lair, got ported to all number of home computer systems, into big box Amiga and DOS games on about 20 floppy disks, with nowhere near the kind of animation that the original arcade versions had. The arcades running on Laserdiscs, of course, and then when DVD came along, there was suddenly a push of, we can get all of this stuff onto a DVD as well. So they would come out. Space Ace came out. I think Hologram Time Traveler came out. Dragon's Lair definitely did any number of times, and then there were all these American laser games that managed to reappear, Mad Dog McCree and such, and you could play these things on your DVD player. And then, since then, I think Space Ace, I don't know, Dragon's Lair certainly did. They kind of got re-released with, almost the sort of retro, the old classics are back, on a number of platforms. PS3 came out on iOS, and all of these things as if, hey, remember Space Ace? That was great, right? Wasn't it? And it really wasn't. So, yeah, it's weird how these games have endured despite being awful, but hey, the animation's nice. And in the new versions, you could just watch the things if you wanted to, sort of while away 8 minutes for $20, instead of the however many dollars it would cost to play through it in the arcade. But yeah, certainly not a classic, but a great looking game, I guess, if you could call it a game. Next. So after a dead March for Famicom owners, they finally had something to sink their teeth into, and it was Duck Hunt in April of 1984 for a Japanese release from Nintendo. It's followed up on Wild Gunman, which launched the Famicom Light Gun in February of 1984. So there was a second game to play that with. And much like Wild Gunman, this was based on an old arcade attraction Nintendo would put out in the 70s. Wild Gunman based on a sort of projection FMV light gun system, and Duck Hunt based on, you know, slightly more advanced technology. But yeah, you can see it, I think, more easily with Wild Gunman than Duck Hunt. You can see it more easily than with Wild Gunman. Just the way the Famicom light gun and the zapper, as it was known in the West, worked. Every time the trigger gets pushed, the screen turns to black, and the way that light guns work, old school light guns work anyway, is that the gun itself is a receiver and not a light emitting thing. So basically, you can see whenever the trigger gets pulled, the target, the duck sort of flashes white and is the only part that's actually drawn in, while the rest of the screen is black. And early light guns, what they would do, and the way the zapper worked, would be when you push the trigger, the screen would go black, and then it would sequentially draw each target in turn. And that way the Famicom could figure out which target you were pointing at. So if the little light receptor had received some information when it was target X that was being drawn, then the Famicom knows, oh, the player hit target X, you know. And if the little light receptor didn't receive any information, then that's an indication that they missed. So that's the way that worked. And basically the timing on these got better as games advanced, you know. And you know, developers were better used to the technology, such that the screen didn't flash entirely black, with later sort of on-rail shooters on the Famicom, and then later guns altogether, like the Menacer on the Mega Drive, and the whatever it was, the Super Scope on the Super Famicom had a different system entirely that was built around progressive scans on CRT TVs. And it's, you know, that system just does not work on modern TVs. Light guns in general, old light guns, not particularly compatible with today's flat screen TVs. You need something completely different. But yeah, as for the game itself, it was an entertaining little shooter. You know, you'd always sort of blast away at the ducks, and the dog there would pop up and laugh at you, and you'd always try and shoot the dog, and you couldn't. I think actually when the Duck Hunt game came to arcades, you know, as a Play Choice 10 title, you could shoot the dog. You know, they modified it so that you could, and of course, rather than the dog dying, he would get cross with you. This being a Nintendo kids-based game, and yeah, Duck Hunt did far better than, you know, it had any right to by quality alone, by being a pack-in the West, of course. And you know, I think most people got their NESs with the Duck Hunt Super Mario Brothers combined pack, and slightly fewer got them with Rob the Robot as well. But yeah, it's an entertaining little shooter, arguably better than Wild Gunman, but not by much. Alright, our big game for April 1984 didn't appear on fancy Famicoms or in arcades or even on the Spectrum. It was on the humble old Atari 2600, really getting on at this point. The machine was getting on for 8 years old, but Activision were sort of devoted to squeezing an awful lot out of the hardware. And the first Pitfall game really sort of offered a lot, and you know, managed to get an awful lot out of the ancient crusty 2600. And oh dear, didn't do too well here. And I'm gonna get sent all the way back and start losing points all the time. And this second outing, the follow-up Pitfall 2, the Lost Caverns, was really just a technical marvel for so many reasons. First of all, the music that you can just faintly hear in the background. I'm sparing your ears the full awfulness of it, but you know, the fact that there was music as you played, that was entirely new. Look at the water. Look at the water here. Stunning. It moves. And the animation of Pitfall Harry here is pretty spectacular. So it was rare for... Oh dear. It was rare for games at the time on 2600 to actually have music playing as you went. It also boasts some vertical scrolling that hopefully I'll be able to show you. I'm not sure where, but I'm going to dive down here and get this gold. And it's also a rare Atari 2600 game that actually has an ending. And you're supposed to collect all the gold bars in order to get to the end of the game, and then you can win. So it's a 2600 game where you actually win, as opposed to see how far you can get and get a high score. And because you can sort of approach anything in any order you like, look at that vertical scrolling. Whoa, that's amazing. Because you can go for these gold bars in any order that you like, in a way, some people say this is an extremely early example of an open world game. So yeah, for all of this to appear on the humble Atari 2600 was something quite remarkable in April of 1984. I have no clue where everything is. Oh god, cripes. Much like Manic Miner, certain conventions like being able to do the old curly muffin and adjust your jumps not in place yet, and that kind of leads, you know, Pitfall to be fairly, Pitfall 2 certainly to be fairly difficult, and it is punishing. When you get hit, you get pinged all the way back to a checkpoint. That visual cue of the cross on the floor, and also being sort of warped back and seeing as you go, seeing, you know, all the progress you had made disappear as you go there. Should be familiar. Should be familiar to you if you played Bit Trip Runner 2. All the way back if you fuck up. It's immensely irritating. Yeah, so some of those conventions not yet apparent, but still, nonetheless, it's interesting, isn't it? Like this and Set Willy appearing at the same. This and Set Willy appearing at the same time, and both of them being about similar things, I guess, about exploring the non-linear environment, or exploring the environment in a non-linear way, I should say, and collecting 100 different treasures dotted about those environments. It's almost like the British and the American take on that. There we go. On the same concept on different sides of the Atlantic, where the British view of it was to go for this domestic setting, and then Activision in the States sort of cashing in on you know, the fervour for Indiana Jones, I guess, and you know, the desire for adventure. That frog looks like he turns into a gun when he jumps, and I've just misjudged my jump there. And oh my goodness, this is bigger punishment for death, I think, than Set Willy. You know, your life's ticking down until you're dead. This idea of having to watch you agonizingly walk back. What is that below me? Yeah, having to agonizingly walk back to where you started, replete with your score, counting down just to show, you know, hey, for fuck's sake. Whoosh. And yeah, there's no game over per se in Pitfall 2, except when you turn the machine off. Because when you turn the machine off, all the progress you've made disappears. But rather, it is about score. Even though there's an ending to Pitfall 2, fuck. Even though there's an ending to Pitfall 2, you know, so there is a perfect score to be had. You can't die. There isn't a game over. There isn't a fail state. It's just you get walked back, and you wind up having a score of 0 points there. And You know, I mean, this is, when you consider, no, what? When you consider memory restrictions were so tight, in the sort of early days of the 2600, it was something spectacular even for a game to have score tracking, full stop. You know, just to have a score at the top of the screen there that was keeping track of different actions having a different point value. Fuck! that this is, you know, really quite an achievement to have scrolling and a large environment and things like that. It's just that I'm terrible at this. I'm worse at it than Jet Set Willy. Let's at least try and get past that fucking wasp or bee, whatever it is. Or is it a bird? I don't know. It's the highest point. There we go. Did it. And yeah, I mean, it seems harsh that I'm being sent all the way back to the beginning. There are other checkpoints as well. The further you go, it's just that I'm so awful at the game. Do it. Yeah, I fell off. Oh no, back in the water. Don't let the eels get me. Eels. Maybe there's some. Yeah, so you do want to kind of discover. There, go, right, no, oh, there you go, yeah, so I found a checkpoint now, hooray! And that means now if I die, I'll respawn at that checkpoint. So yeah, again, that's another sort of novel idea that was going on, you know, that was new to games at this point, is, you know, actual checkpoints and dying and you know, being able to continue further on into the experience. That was really something novel and interesting for the era. And yeah, Pitfall 2 got ported around largely by Sega, who handled conversions to the SG-1000 and the Mark III, which would have been the Master System later on. And yeah, this also got, who got hold of it? I believe it was Hudson or Hewson. One of the two. I always get Hudson and Hewson mixed up. But they would grab it and turn it into Super Pitfall on the NES. And there it had a different story about typically rescuing your girlfriend. And was a legendarily unfair game that a lot of people kind of unjustly label Kasoge. But it was legendary for forcing you to play through the entire game twice just to reach the real ending, much the same way that Ghouls and Ghosts did. And then, of course, actually probably about 10 years on, in '94, there was a sort of a remaster, sort of rejiggered version of Pitfall for the new generation. Was it Pitfall: The New Adventure, I think? And that was, you know, kind of a 16-bit-ized version of Pitfall that eventually made its way onto the PlayStation as well, but with very little funness attached to it. And since then, we haven't really heard that much from Pitfall. It kind of became, you know, as a lot of products do, it became an endless runner on the iPhone, with a few sort of little retro twists to it, but you know, that wasn't. It was an okay sort of temple knockoff, but it wasn't that it wasn't brilliant, and it kind of, you know, it feels a bit of a shame that there isn't a sort of modern new outing for Pitfall that could sort of take advantage of today's technology, but be a little bit more sort of exploratory. And then again, we've already got We've already got any number of you know, 2D Metroidvania style resurgences for old video game franchises, so I'm not sure we need another one, and we already have a new Pitfall Harry in the shape of Nathan Drake, I think, these days, in the Uncharted games. Tomb Raider to an extent, but certainly the DNA of those games can be, I don't know how you do this at all, can be seen in Pitfall 2. So yeah, there you go, Pitfall 2 for the ancient, by now 2600, leading the charge in April 1984. I've been Chris Carlton for KaijuPop.com. Thanks for watching. As ever, stay tuned. There will be an April 1994 video in due course, as well as our monthly written feature on the website with these games and plenty more besides. Cheers, bye.